Most people I know aren't investing, and the reasons are usually the same. In this video, I'm going to answer the question, should I invest? I've kind of positioned myself as someone, probably accidentally, that people go to when they have financial decisions to make, which I think is great. It's great that they're, one, thinking about it, and it's two, great that they're coming to me because they obviously think I know what I'm talking about. You can make your own mind up over time. I've had a couple of conversations recently. One was with a work colleague, and she's approaching, I say approaching, I think she's approaching pension age. She didn't give me her exact age, and I'm definitely not asking her what her age is. And she was asking me, "Oh, what should I do? I'm approaching retirement age. I want more money from my retirement. What's the best way to make it grow?" And we discussed the situation, and I gave her all the information that based on my knowledge. And actually, she came to the conclusion that, you know what, I'm not going to invest. I'm going to stick it in. I'm going to overpay my pension. But the main reason because you're going to get access to that money anyway. And the main reason to invest over put it in your pension is so you can access it should you need it. I'll do another video on pensions, more detail on pensions. That's the whole topic in the same. Also speaking to another friend of mine, Danny, the other Friday night went to the pub, and he's moving. So he's moving from one place in the UK to another. And he said, well, I'm going to sell my house. I'm going to rent in the place that I want to move to. And then, just do viewings, over the course of, 6 months, a year and a half, I don't know. And he said, what should I do with that money once I sell the house? Should I put it in an investment account somewhere, or what should I do with it? And we just, again, discussed the situation, and actually it was quite an easy answer. And the decision for him was, don't invest it, because if, for example, a war starts, an even bigger war starts over the next few months, just after you put it in there and it drops, then either you're going to be sweating until you can take it out, hoping it goes up again, or you're going to have to take out less than you put in. But that said, the answer usually is yes. They're just two very specific examples based on conversations I've had recently. But usually the answer is yes. Even if it's just small amounts. So, if you can afford £10 a month, do that. £20 a month, £30 a month. It all starts. It's not always just about the investing. It's about the learning, the knowledge, and creating a habit of investing. Especially if you're just going to take that 10, 20, 30 quid, 100 quid a month and blow it on, takeaways. I mean, before I was investing, I would happily blow £100 a month on takeaways, happily blow a few £100 a month on going out drinking. So, much better to put that money somewhere for your future than just blow it. Why do people hesitate? So I hesitated myself. I was researching, I was looking for the perfect moment. I had the point of view, it's too risky, it goes up and down. And then I was thinking, the fees, I don't understand the fee structure. And that's, valid. The fee structures are complicated and it does go down. I was like, but the fee structure is like 2% fees every year that I need it to grow X amount. Not knowing the full information about, investment types, the accounts I can use, and it's, especially the modern low fee investment products out there, which we'll go into. Some people just say, I haven't got enough money now, I'm going to start when I earn more. But you can start with next to nothing, £10, £20 that you won't miss, and it builds the habit. There is an investing problem in the UK. Now, I can't say what that is. I can't say whether it's lack of education, maybe, probably. I can't say whether it's just a cultural thing, because we all put all of our eggs in the housing basket, or a lot of us do, and that was me back in the day as well. There's some stats that I'll put sources to where the stats come from, so you just know I'm not making them up. But 23% of UK adults, only 23% of UK adults invest outside of their pensions. That's compared to nearly 2/3 of Americans do. Outside of pensions, Americans hold 4 times more of their wealth in investments, or also known as equities, than people in the UK do. Apparently, I was shocked when I saw this, I haven't validated it, but I can see it being true. Apparently, the UK has the lowest ownership of stocks and shares in any country in the G7. So that's the greatest, the biggest 7 economies around the world. The UK, people in the UK put 50% of their wealth in property, which compared to 26% of the US, and that might on the surface of it sound great, but it's not necessarily because we're good at investing in property or buying our home. So I know countries have a much larger home ownership shares than the UK, but it's more because we're so bad at investing outside of our homes and our mortgages. My story. So I did touch on, my nervousness of starting, but the first. So I guess my first experience of investing was I bought my first flat when I was 24, quite young, and then I rented out the spare room. It wasn't an investment then; it was just a home. And then when I moved around the corner, I was happy with the area, but I wanted a bigger place and a garden, so I moved around the corner. And then rather than sell the flat, I rented out the flat and got myself an income from it. Now back then, that was a much simpler decision to make than it would be now, because tax breaks on property, income from property, were so much better than they are now. But it got to the point where it was getting, it was a staggered approach, getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point in the end when it was actually costing me money, cash flow. Obviously, there was growth of the property value, but even with that considered, I think for the last year, I still would have lost money on it. And so I started thinking, well before this, in that journey of like the diminishing returns of renting, I started thinking, what can I do with my spare cash to protect my future, especially if I'm going to sell this flat. And so I started researching investing and stocks and shares ISAs. I didn't even know about stocks and shares ISAs. I knew about cash ISAs, but I didn't know about stocks and shares ISAs. So once I learned enough, again, it took up a lot of courage, and I was reading watching a lot of videos, doing a lot of research, because I still had this, is it risky? Is it gambling? But then once I was comfortable, I started very small and I opened my first Vanguard portfolio. I will do a video on Vanguard. I'll do a video on how to invest. And then I just started investing small bits, and I saw over time the growth. Just grew over time. Obviously, some months it went down, some months it went up. I wasn't the person that would check it every month, which shouldn't be if you're investing for the long term. But every now and again, every 6 months when I logged on, it was growing, and so that gave me the confidence to put more and more and more money in. So I created the habits. I created the habits that I utilize today, and the growth, when you talk about the growth of investments and the growth I experienced in my investment, that's known as compounding, your wealth and your growth compounding over time. So your money grows, and then the growth on your money that's grows. So I'm not going to over explain it, but I think you get the gist of that. If we want some figures, I know this can get really boring, isn't it, as soon as you get into figures, and I don't want to put anyone off, especially if you're a big beginner here. But if we go by the figures, the MSCI World Index, that is an index fund of all the biggest companies in the world. An index fund is just like a piece of each of the biggest company in the world. So a piece of Apple, a piece of Google, a piece of Facebook, or Meta, a piece of whatever, BP, all the big countries around the world. So when you invest in an index fund, you're actually buying a little piece of every one of the biggest companies in all of the biggest economies around the world. The average growth of this index fund has been just under 9% per year. Over the last 10 years, it's actually been just over 12%, so even better. And more recently, the stock market's gone bananas. I'm using the World Index Fund, but a lot of people talking about it. To simplify it, use the S&P 500's average returns, and the S&P 500 is the USA stock market, the biggest 500 companies in the USA. So if you buy a piece of the S&P 500, you're basically buying a piece of all the biggest US companies in the world. That's actually averaged 10%. So when you're talking to people, without any figures or anything written down in front of you, it's much easier to use that, because 10% is, well, much easier to calculate the figures in your head as you're discussing. But I'm going to use the World Index Fund, so it's real index fund, real figures. If you would have invested just this example of compounding over the last 10 years, if you would have invested £1,000 10 years ago, that £1,000 would have been £3,000 now, just by doing nothing, just by investing it in that index fund. I will show on screen now some illustrations based on this average growth over the last 10, 20, and 30 years. So after 10 years, you'd have just under 20K. After 20 years, you'd have over 65K. And after 30 years, you'd have over just under £180,000. That's the power of compounding. Now, that's £100 a month over 10, 20, and 30 years. People might say, oh yeah, but I could just put it in cash and the cash will grow. Yeah, but you wouldn't average anywhere near the amount of returns just having it in cash than you would in a bank account. Even on the highest paying interest accounts, even if you moved the money, you would have nowhere near that amount of growth. And if you would have put the money under your pillow or mattress, you'd have no growth. People might choose to invest in cash because of the perception of risk. And there is a use case where cash is right. So my friend that's moving, actually, you need the money in a year. Cash is the right avenue. But if it's over the long term, 9 times out of 10, it's investing is the way to go over cash. People might think, oh yeah, but what if I invest and I lose everything? Well, in the short term, you might lose something. It's not like gambling where you put all your money on red or black in roulette, and if it doesn't come in, you lose it. You could pick one company and lose, that company goes under, then you lose all your money. But the beauty of index fund investing is you're picking all the companies. So, was it 20, 30 years ago, if you invested in an index fund, a tech index fund, you'd invested in Yahoo, that money would have went to zero. But you'd also invested in like Google and Amazon and Meta when it came around, and the money would have grown. So you're hedging your bets. Short term, yes, it goes up and down. Long term, over the past hundreds of years, it's always recovered. It's never gone down and stayed down. And I mean, this year the stock markets the USA stock market has posted new highs, quite regularly. I crunched the numbers as well, given the ups and downs. So the first graph you saw was an average of it going up, but growth isn't linear. I've crunched the numbers of the real gains and losses in this index fund, the MSCI one that I'm talking about. And here's a graph of the growth and decline, but overall the growth of the investment over the years. And as you can see, it's gone up. And here is another graph showing the years that it's grown. There's been growth, positive growth, and the years that there's been decline. And you can see that there's far more years of growth than decline. So overall, the growth always outweighs the decline. I say this with the caveat of I'm not a financial advisor, and the next 30 years may not be anything like the last 30 years. The next 100 years might not be anything like the last 100 years. But the world's banking on it, isn't it? Because all of our pensions are invested in the stock market. It is worth a quick mention on inflation. So, yeah, 180 grand from one of those examples before isn't worth 180 grand in 30 years' time. No, it's not. But 180 grand in 30 years' time is much better than, I don't know what it would be if you hadn't invested it, but a lot less than that. I'll do another video on inflation because there's a lot to go on inflation. It's also worth mentioning with, what products can I use? ISAs. I've mentioned them a few times, but ISAs, that's a tax-free way of investing over time. So you don't pay any tax on your growth. So when is the best time to start investing? Well, in your early 20s, really, when you get your first job, which for some of you, that may be now, but for those of you that isn't, the second best time is now. My next videos are going to be on how to invest. So if you've watched this video and thought, yeah, investing's right for me, I want to invest, watch my next video on how to invest. I'll go into ISAs in another video, and then I'll do walkthroughs of some of my favorite products. So the Vanguard stocks and shares ISA, the Trading 2-1 stocks and shares ISA, and maybe another one. Thank you.